Hey everyone, welcome back to the Dairy Raid. And finally, spring ball is upon us after what has seemed like the longest offseason, certainly in my football fandom, with all of the questions on the roster, new players, new coaches, lingering issues from the 2025 season. We're finally going to have some actual on the field football to evaluate, as later this week, the Badgers will take the field for the first of their 15 spring practices. And as always with the Dairy Raid, my goal here this spring is to show you Wisconsin football from my coach's point of view. And there's not a better place to start with that than right here at the beginning with spring ball and talk about what spring ball means to a coach, what the purpose of spring ball is, and then use that as a springboard to taking a look at the team and trying to figure out what the hell we are going to have on the field come this fall. So it can be difficult with evaluating and making informed opinions on a football team that we as fans have very, very limited access to. And that's certainly going to be the case this spring, as I'm sure by now you have seen the football staff is limiting some media availability. There is going to not be an open scrimmage, showcase, launch, whatever at the end of the spring. They're keeping a lot of things tight to the vest. And that is certainly understandable in this era of college football, with tampering being so widely utilized by every program out there. Who knows who's sitting in the stands watching those practices and filming and sending it to coaches, etc. I can totally understand the more secretive nature that the staff wants to have this year. But that means our access is going to be more limited. What we're actually going to see on the field is going to be more limited. So more than ever, our view of the team this offseason or this spring is going to be driven by the media narratives. So what can we as fans do to look past the storyline and look at what's actually happening on the field? Well, that's what we're going to be here to talk about. And throughout this series, after this video, plan to have 3 separate videos breaking down the spring preview for the Badgers. First, obviously, I want to talk about, I think, what's on everybody's mind, the offense and the absolute complete overhaul. Where are we going to see 2, maybe 3 returning starters? So many transfers coming in. And obviously, the personnel usage is how these new players are going to get involved in the scheme. How the coaching staff is going to divide up those reps is going to be really important. The development of the quarterback room beyond Colton Joseph, I think we can safely assume that Colton Joseph is QB1. But if the last 3 years have been any indication, we need to get real close and intimate with QBs 2 through 4. So the development of the QB room is going to be really important. And because any successful offense today needs a solid QB, it needs solid QB play. We can't get by in college football in 2026 without having a good quarterback. So it's going to be huge for our offense's development. And that's going to lead into how the rest of the skill positions are going to be utilized. With so many new receivers, tight ends, running backs, and a big question mark about how the scheme is going to be adapted around all these new players, finding out how these players are actually being used on the field together is going to give a real indication of the direction of the offense this season. Episode 2, defense. And I think there are less glaring questions this spring than there were last year. It's just more how people are going to fall into place. We've got, to me, 3 players that I'm going to guarantee are going to be on the field every rep they can have. And they're only going to be taken off the field when they need rest or if they get injured. And that's 3 of the linebackers, Cooper Catalano, Mason Posa, and Sebastian Cheeks. But how are we going to fill in the other 11 players? And is it going to be a situation like in 2023 and 2024 where it was, we're just going to try to put our best 11 out there and hope that our best 11 can match up against the offense we're going to play against? Or are they going to take the platoon and by committee approach that we used last season and expand upon it? I think that was a really pleasant surprise of how well, especially with the front 7, how in the aggregate we're able to get solid play maybe when certain players got more or less playing time and they were used in different roles. So who is going to be used is all going to be led into how the defensive structure is going to be. We've been hearing this is going into the 4th year, how we run a 3-3 defense, but how much we're actually in that personnel group. This year, I think we actually have the personnel that matches more what Luke Fickell and Mike Tressell's Cincinnati defenses look like. So perhaps the next step in the evolution is, again, to bring in more of what they originally wanted to do here before they attempted to meld the elite. So that is going to be interesting to see how much we're actually going to be able to learn about in the spring ball with the amount of limited access that we have. You never know. And again, with all these different players and all these different roles, it's going to change how this defense brings pressure. And we got way better last season with bringing pressure with 4, bringing pressure with the players on the line of scrimmage. I think that happened a lot because we had maybe NFL caliber players on that line. I think we still probably do. But how are we going to scheme up more pressure by we have a lot of athletes on this defense now, and how we can utilize an athletic defense in a conference that is more traditionally based on size, strength, power, and scheme. How can we bring athleticism and scheme around it? And then, of course, there's going to be big depth chart battles. And how is the defense coaching staff going to look to fill the roles in the defense, fill the depth chart? Are we doing it based on set roles and what these players bring to us now? Or are we going to build this defense, build the depth chart based on what these players could become? Because in a lot of positions, particularly the safeties, if you're looking at potential, the depth chart is going to be set one way. If you looked on strict right now skill set, the depth chart's going to look different and perhaps create a logjam. So a lot of questions about the defense. For me, less questions about is the defense actually going to be any good, and more about how we're going to achieve our goals this season. And then finally going to wrap up the series with just kind of looking at some big picture things. How have the young players developed, again, with so many of the transfers coming in who are younger and the early enrollees, the red shirts from last season? Are these young players positioning themselves to get playing time? And how can and should the coaching staff utilize these young players? Who is stepping forward to become the leaders of this defense leaders of this team, when you lose key figureheads in a lot of the position rooms, like a Riley Mullman, like a Ben Barton, Christian Allegro, Rico, so many players that were leaders on this team who are going to fill those roles. You know, your Mason Posas and your Cooper Catalanos, those are givens. But who's going to lead the receiver room? Who's going to lead the running back room with so many new faces? Leadership is going to be key. That's all going to lead into the team culture and how a team that up until now has not had very much success is positioning itself to have another great recruiting class, an in-state recruiting class. Is this a sign that the culture is going back to what it used to be? Or have they found a way to look forward while learning from the past? And then just finally, what does this mean to a program that is in year 4? And is there a silver lining? What can we expect to see? And what can be seen as success at this point in the program? So that is the outline of how we are going to preview this spring. Obviously, once we start getting the practices, all the information that we're going to be getting is going to be secondhand. And it is going to be up to us as fans to take that secondhand information, look beyond the headline, and think critically, but more importantly, think realistically. Don't think with hyperbole, and just see what's on the field. You'd be amazed of what you can learn from a 4-second clip of a player running a drill or running a route or doing a blocking assignment. You can learn a lot. And I'm hoping throughout this spring, I can be there as a guide to help you how to evaluate the information that we're going to get this spring so you can have an informed fandom going into the fall and hopefully into a more successful season in 2026. So I think that's going to wrap it up today. Short preview of the preview episode. Don't need to go in much more detail than that. Tomorrow, we're going to come back and we're going to talk about the offense, what we're going to look forward to this spring. And I'm glad that football's back. I hope you guys are too. Thank you as always for watching or listening, and we will see you next time.